Welcome to the Golf Coach Podcast. Bhrett, how you going, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me here.
Mate, yeah, we appreciate you coming on. And, I've had some conversations with some of my students this morning, and I said, you know what? I've got a good guest on the podcast coming up, and it's going to solve some of your answers. So, solve some of your questions. So, we're excited to have you on. But, Bhrett, can you just explain to us, firstly, what you do and how you got into the field? And then we'll get into the questions.
Yeah, so I'm a clinical psychologist. So in the States, I'm sure it's the same way in Australia, but we, there's a variety of different kinds of psychologists. Clinical psychologists are trained, licensed, kind of like, we come from the doctorate world instead of like the medical degree world. Yeah. And we were trained in the assessment, the diagnosis, the treatment of psychiatric or psychological conditions, and really more along the lines of the building behavioral plans to help individuals manage things that happen in their life. And there's an element that we work in the sports where we work with high performers on dealing with the stresses and performing at the top of the game. There are also people who are, specialists in sport that don't have a clinical background. I got into it because I struggled as a player. I was a baseball player in college and I had some injuries and I struggled with the coping element of it. I struggled with overcoming some of the doubts I had and dealing with the injury. And then I decided to do my doctorate and did my training. And I actually worked in a corporate field. I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for 8 years doing research, development, programming, strategy. And on the side, I just started working with some golfers. I was an avid golfer, played golf to relax, played golf since I was a kid. But I kind of took the approach of what we used to do as pitchers and how we perform so well, and took it to golfers. The next thing I knew, I had a practice that was burgeoning and responding. And so I eventually left the pharmaceutical industry, and I've been doing this for about 12 to 13 years, maybe longer, 14 years.
Wow, that's a long time. I didn't know it'd been that long. So when you got into the field, you basically, it wasn't to get into the sports side of it. You obviously had passion in sport, and then it kind of just, went from there, right?
Well, I got into it. I knew I always wanted to work with athletes again. At the time I played back in the early 90s, my coach was very big on the mental game, but we didn't have people who came in and worked with us. We didn't have embedded psychologists or mental coaches. I knew there was something to it. I just felt like I needed to be trained. And I kind of came from a household where my dad and my mom believed that if you were going to go to school, you got the deepest training you could in your field. You became an expert. Yeah. And I'm glad I did. But I went to school. Then I trained in the psychological elements where there's an interplay between the medical and the psychological conditions of medical disorders, right? So people with chronic pain or rehabilitative medicine, stroke, and behavioral changes that can help people. It's not that far away from what we do in performance psychology because you're dealing with a multidisciplinary team. You're dealing with a lot of different voices, and you're not doing long-term therapy. You're doing very quick, brief interventions to help provide resources for people. So I knew I wanted to come back to working with athletes, but I felt like I needed to train across the continuum.
Yeah. Yep.
And that gave me that opportunity to do that.
Yeah. And that seems to be a lot of the experts in the field as well in all different facets of golf have kind of come from a deeper understanding and background as well, and then brought those skills to golf, which I've seen a lot, especially through some of the biomechanical studies, right? Yep. Like, you got like Dr. Sasha McKenzie or like Dr. Mark Bull, or you've got Dr. Kwan. Now, alrighty. Now, for people listen to this podcast a lot, know that I believe one of the most fascinating stories in the history of golf, and I was on a vacation with my wife without any of our kids. They were with my in-laws. And I share a story a lot about, we're at a cafe and I was just glued to my phone. And I very rarely watch golf on my phone out and about. I'll check the scores. But I've never been more fascinated than the story of Nick Dunlap in golf. Like, obviously Tiger Woods 2019 Masters, all these types of really cool stories. And I've shared about it a lot on the podcast and spoken about that scenario. How long have you been working with Nick for? So
Nick grew up at the club one of the clubs I'm a member at.
Okay.
And he grew up on the sixth hole. It was par 5.
Yeah.
And Nick was always a little punky kid that lived in the neighborhood. We knew he was talented. He was talented in any sport he put himself to.
Yeah.
Only child. I'm an only child. I get it. And, he was always up there. And so I would help him out. When he went to high school, I'd help him out. He moved away, probably starting high school, but he was always around. Like he moved to a different state, but he'd always come back and stay. That was his home base. And so I'd help him out. And then through high school, I helped him out. When he won the junior, I was helping him out. And I always say helping him out. It wasn't like we had regular sessions. It was more along the lines of Nick always had my number. He'd always call. He'd ask questions. Yeah. I'd see him out there, so forth. When he went to Alabama, I saw him quite a bit because I'm the psychologist over at the University of Alabama. And he would come and visit. And then when he won the amateur, it was the same type of thing. I was staying in touch with him. In fact, funny story about the amateur. I knew the amateur was going on. I was on vacation. And I just happened to look to see who made the match play. And I was like, oh, man, Nick's playing tomorrow. And he's playing against another kid that's local, Gordon Sargent. And so those are two top-notch kids from Birmingham. And then I texted Nick, like, congrats. He said, hey, you got a minute to chat? So I talked to him, and then, I just stayed in touch with him through the match play. I kind of feel bad that I didn't really pay attention to it going into the stroke play. Yeah. But that's kind of how Nick and I were. And then when he it was the same type of thing. Maybe I should not pay attention more. When he got the sponsors invite to play at the Amex, yep. I remember looking at it going, oh, man, Nick's in the field. I need to probably reach out and see how he's doing. He's an Alabama kid. So I reached out, and he was like, yeah, good, doing good. And then as the week went on, I just kind of kept staying in touch with him. He kept calling. And then going into the Sunday round, he was actually paired with another player I was working with at the time, Sam Burns. Yeah. And they were paired with JT, Justin Thomas, in the final threesome. And I know Justin very well. Unbelievable. And, I kind of told Nick, I said, look, you have played extraordinarily golf this week. You have not been under pressure because they play a 3-course loop there. Yep. You can go out like he did at La Quinta and shoot 60 and nobody's watching. Okay. There may be a few people coming out. You're not at the stadium course. But I said, now you're at the stadium course, but nothing changes. And in this course, this tournament, the problem with the Amex is that when you're in the final group, that's really the only group that feels pressure. Everyone else feels hunting. Yep. Everyone else is hunting. It's a birdie fest. But when you're in the lead group, it is hard to maintain an 8 or 9 under day, right? Yeah, because you've got pressure. Yep. So I said, look, it's not going to go your way, but you're going to have to play off the guys you're with. And Sam was wonderful for him. I mean, I can't speak about JT because I don't work with JT, but I do know how Sam was doing, helping him out during that day. And Nick just played great. And then, he won, had to make a life-changing decision to turn pro almost immediately because of the signature events, the way that those are set up in the PGA Tour. And he turned pro, and it was a little bit of a world here I am thing because, it's different than when Tiger turned pro. It's different when other guys, you take a look at other amateurs that play very well on an amateur status, but when they're a pro, they have expectations, they have demands, they have pressure. And he started out in those events, and it was like Pebble Beach, signature event, a lot of rough. Yeah. Torrey Pines, a lot of rough. And it was just one after another where all of a sudden the driver became an issue. And it wasn't a technical, it was just more along the lines of, man, I'm not used to playing golf courses where the fairways are this narrow and it's so penal to be out of play. And he had to learn. And it took him a couple months. And I remember him playing at Quail Hollow with another one of my players, Billy Horschel, and him telling Billy, like, I'm learning that you just can't fire at pins all the time. And Billy's like, you're learning. Like, you have to know where to take your punches. And he didn't qualify for the British Open, or the Open Championship. And he said, I'm going to go play Reno. What do you think? I said, well, if you're going to go play Reno with a guy who has an exemption, okay, you're already exempt for next 2 years. You go to Reno with one goal and one goal only, and that's to win, because most of the other individuals in that field are working at that stage of the year to maintain their tour card. So you're playing a different game than everybody else. And I need you to go out there with one goal and one goal only, but I don't want you to think you have to lead every day. Yeah. And we just developed a strategy for him, and he won. Last year was a struggle for him. It was an adjustment year. As we're speaking about this, I just noticed he's 5 under on today, finished his round at 5 under. And he told me, he said, look, I broke 2 course records this past week. He found it. Sometimes the calendar needs to flip for players, and it flipped in his mind, and he got a feel that he really likes. He's driving the snot out of it now, and he's an elite player, and he's learned how to mature at 21 years of age as a tour player. That's not easy. Yes.
So he's what you're saying there is like he's learning lessons on tour that perhaps those lessons might have been learnt as an amateur or
totally. We look at every time we have success in anything that we do, it doesn't matter what sport, it doesn't matter what we do in life. You got to learn how to succeed at the new level you're at.
Yeah.
Right? And we look at it from the outside and we say, well, it's this, and man, my skills got to improve, my talent's got to improve. It's more than skill and talent. Skill and talent always gets you the invitation to the door, but what helps you be successful in those environments is how you handle increased pressure. And pressure is relative. All right. Now, I irk in people in my field who say pressure doesn't exist. Pressure exists. Okay. It's any demand that we have to respond to. And altitude, you don't feel altitude, but when you're going upstairs, you feel it. Right.
Yeah.
And so, the thing about it is like when you're showing up and you're, even though they don't look at the gambling odds, let's say, they know if they're one of the top ranked players in the field and there's an expectation.
100%.
And so what happens is you see a lot of players play well on a Thursday or Friday, but they can't sustain it because the pressure and the demands are coming on. Yeah. Well, a lot of times they have to learn how to be a player at that level, right? They have to learn how to show up every day. And as one of my players who won a U.S. Open said, I can't make a mistake like that as a U.S. Open champ. And it's like, that's hogwash. But that's the pressure that they feel, right? That those expectations are there that I need to play that well all the time. Yeah. And you got to learn how to manage that.
Yeah. Geez, there's a lot to digest there. But that's when it comes to, like, just circling a little bit back there to Nick and his success. Did you forecast this, like when you knew Nick and when you met Nick, did you think to yourself like this guy? Because it seems to me like when you said there about him learning there, you were taking into account that he had that conversation with Billy Horschel. And to me, when I've seen success with my professional golfers who get out there and in their first year on tour, like on the lesser tours, we try to just learn how to get comfy being out there and look at the lessons that we can reflect on. It seems like he learns his lessons quite quickly and he's quite open-minded. I don't know if that's the right word, but he seems to get through them quickly.
That's interesting, right? Because there's a stubbornness that comes with greatness.
Yeah.
But you also have to lose stubbornness in order to grow. And great players they'll be stubborn to their growth. They won't always be stubborn to their ideas. And somebody like Nick will look at it and go, ooh, my pitching and chipping has to get better. Because, when you're in college, how high is the rough, right?
Yeah.
Playing at tour events where rough is there full time and pins are tucked, it's a challenge. Bunkers are usually better, so players' bunker games usually transfer just fine. But their driver doesn't transfer because they're more demanding in penal driver holes.
Yeah.
Their par 5 scoring usually doesn't improve because they got driving in play and they're hitting to tougher pins. And I think the average fan needs to understand is, you've got to look to see where pins are and the small windows that they have and how close they are to edges and slopes on the PGA Tour. And if they didn't do that, they would shoot the lights all out of it. Yeah. Like these guys, and I'm speaking of men's tour, these guys are so elite at what they do that you need to put those challenges. It's like an F1. You've got to make the course demanding for the drivers or they'll pick it apart. So when you move from, let's say, the Korn Ferry Tour, where the golf courses are not as challenging because how many are there really that are not goofed up? You can drive it all over the place because they don't have the budget to grow let's be honest, they don't have the budget to grow the rough up all year long for regular play. Then you get on the PGA Tour and that ball that's a foot off of the fairway is now maybe you can get it up near the green, but you can't control the spin. Yeah. And so you got to learn the grit and the grind side of it. And so that's just learning about what it takes at every level. And that's the hard part.
I like that. Yeah. And I like that you say there about learning at every single level. And I guess there's also a little bit of a balance in that as well about when you're talking about your identity of how you want to play golf, because one of the biggest challenges that I've kind of faced in my coaching and watching my players, grow onto playing on, the tours that we have in Australia or Australasian tours and around is that they want to get out there and they want to start playing golf completely different to how they want to play. They want to see a ball look differently, this look differently. And I just think, wow, you've got a lot to learn about traveling. It's your first time full-time getting around. But we need to look at certain pieces you need to add to your identity without kind of stripping it all back, right? And it's fascinating that Nick was like, I need to improve this piece. I need to improve this piece.
Well, the one element there is that, people make it out on tour because of certain strengths that they have, whether it's physical strengths or neurocognitive strengths, mental toughness, however we want to define it. They get out there and all of a sudden they abandon that. They start trying to fix all their weaknesses. Mm-hmm. That's the gap. The game is built upon, there is no consistency in golf. Okay? Mm-hmm. It's a random variable game that will take a piece of your soul every time it has a chance. There's no consistency. Mm-hmm. What we perceive as consistency are hot streaks or cold streaks. Okay, so it's like gambling.
Yes.
So when we're chasing the negatives to fix a problem, then what happens is we start abandoning our strengths and taking the time away from what we do, because you're going to be naturally kicked in the shins during those times. And I think that goes for everybody. Mm-hmm. Like, you go out and play, people feel like they need to add to their repertoire. Simplify your repertoire. Make your weapons more effective the way that they are. Cam Young is one of my clients. He won at the at Greensboro this year, Wyndham Classic. Right before the week, he kind of called and we were talking, and he came to a conclusion that I was kind of nudging him towards, which was stop trying to hit the ball both ways.
Yes.
Like, you don't need to do that. And I'm a big fan of Scott Fawcett with Decade, but it makes sense. Like, I told him, I said, you're one of the best drawers of the golf ball. Why do we want to try to add more because you think you need more?
Yeah.
Like, simplify. He scored off his socks that week, ran away with the tournament.
Yeah.
And that's how people need to do it. It's like, like the old 9-ball drill where you had to have 9 different ball flights to show command. Do one.
100%.
Like, do one. That's pretty good.
And what I think is important for people to learn as well is that obviously we know, people who are, involved in golf deeply know that, a fade pattern to a draw pattern. To shape a ball 2 different ways, there's a lot of differences that are going on. And for instance, that when you haven't tried and tested it exactly and seen under the real pressure. So maybe on the driving range, you're like, I can hit it both ways quite close to this target out there, or my TrackMan and numbers are good. But under that real pressure, have you actually tested it and seen the results properly? But when you talk about hot streaks and cold streaks, I was having a conversation with a coach the other day. Like, I think it's an interesting example, and I'd like to get your take on it, with Nelly Korda this year. Like, apparently her statistics across the board are better than she was last year, right? Mm-hmm. And last year was, as we know, was like a Scotty Scheffler type of year, right? And this year, I'm not too sure if she's won. Like,
she hasn't won this year.
Yeah, what's your take on that? Like, when you
that's the luck side. There's a randomness to success, right? You do everything right, and how much of golf do we really control the outcome for? Not as much as we think we do, because you're sending a ball through space. But to hit a ball, you stand perpendicular to a target, or to your ball, parallel to a target. Take a club away from the target, away from the ball, turn and fire the club down through the ground to launch a small ball through the air, and we're pissed off if it's a little off the line. I mean, it's really a neurophysiological miracle to do what we do, right? We're good at throwing things, except unless you're British, but, because I throw underhanded. But, the reality is everyone else, like, it doesn't make any sense of why we do the things we do in golf. And yet we're pissed off if a ball, we can execute everything well, we can improve our putting, but somebody goes out and shoots socks off that weekend, you may not win, right? Yeah. You may not win, but you played great. And your numbers, and that's one of the things that gets me is, as players, players will come back and you'll say, well, how'd you play? And this is at every level. They'll say, well, I played okay. What'd you score? And they'll give you the score, and you're like, man, that's pretty good. They're like, yeah, but I didn't hit it good. Or they'll say, man, I'm playing great. I just didn't score. And it's like, they'd rather take the fact that they're hitting it good but not score than scoring and not hit it good. Yeah. And it's completely backwards. It's the only sport that does that. It's the only sport. Like, we should be celebrating somebody going, look, I didn't have crap today. Yeah. I got it around. What they see is, man, I didn't have crap today, and I'm not going to have crap tomorrow either. What's wrong with me? And it's like, dude, you don't know what you're going to have each day. You just don't.
Yeah, and it's also the definition of what's crap, right? And I was talking to a player about this the other day about, he's looking at his scorecards for the first 7 holes. He was just kind of watching updates come through, and he was 2 under. He said, yeah, but I was hitting it like crap, and then I got caught out. I'm like, yeah, but you managed a way to hit it like crap and still be 2 under. It shouldn't be a matter of, you should be looking at changing your game plan a little bit to adjusting to how you potentially are playing that day and your dispersion. You know, Scotty Fawcett talked about the dispersion, and then doing your best. I look at it as a proud moment of like, imagine when I start hitting it well, what can have to happen here. But I have on my next dot point here for you about expectations, and
they're garbage.
They're garbage. Yes. So what do you mean? Okay, garbage is great. And so when I talk about expectations, do you mean like before a player has a round of golf, do you like the idea of setting some form of a goal in regard to
that's different
mini goals and expectations? Yeah, that's what I was going to kind of get at here. Expectations.
So people say, well, shouldn't you expect to play good? Shouldn't you expect to win? No, you should believe it. You shouldn't expect it. Think about the root of the term of expectations. You're going to predict the future with some past behavior.
Yes.
We suck at that.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't go according to the plan that we think, we start to add pressure, stress, and tension, which is none of that's good for performance.
Yeah.
So we can't expect shit. Okay. Sorry. I don't know if this is
you can swear.
Podcast.
No, you can swear. I got
we can't expect shit.
Yeah.
We don't know how it's going to go. Okay. Can you trust? It's different. So if we want to go to a really nice steakhouse, you've been there 100 times. I've been there 50 times. We go and we're like, man, they just didn't have a good night. Okay. You'll give them grace because you have a history of success there.
Okay.
And you say, well, isn't that past behavior predicting future? Okay. They have a lot of control over their systems.
Yeah.
All right. If you and I have never been to a place and we just go there to enjoy the experience, more than likely you'll have a good meal because you didn't put any pre-existing expectations on it.
Yeah.
There was I saw this talk one time when people were talking about the movie Hangover. Remember the Hangover movie?
Yeah.
People were like, man, that was one of the funniest movies of all time. And it really broke down into two different groups. People who saw it without being told and people who got told to go see it. People who went and saw it after being told were like, it was good. I mean, it was fine. But people who saw it authentically were like, God, that was so funny. Because it was supposed to be one of the funniest movies of all time. And I think it's a great movie, right? It's sophomore humor. It's great. It's funny as hell. But if I talk it up about how good it is, then I start changing the levels and you start comparing it to other things. And I don't know what your comparison points are. Belief, though, if you have a goal, that's fine. I've got some players who go out and they're trying to shoot a number every day, like 2 or 3 under on each side, or they're going to break it down into small elements. Some people are like, look, I just want to commit to every shot, whatever it is. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. Those are I call them kind of reconnection points. But you don't know how the game is going to go, and guarantee it's not going to go how you think it's going to go. And
go on.
You just have to be able to respond to each challenge and allow it to piece together and tell the story at the end. That's all I care about.
I like that. Respond to each challenge. And it's in a lot of like, I think it's in Buddhist scripture about, they talk about not assuming, right? No assumptions. And I think if you go into anything and you don't assume anything of someone as well, then also your experience is better as well. And you're taking away that judgmental thing. But this takes me into my next point, right? I wanted to talk to you about pre-shot routines because I know there's different things out there. And you can pick apart what a general thing, the way that I use it, right, is I try to create like phase 1, which is data collection, getting yourself ready, club selection, all this type of stuff. Phase 2, about what we're trying to control, if it might be a swing thought, a swing feel, having some practice swings. And then phase 3, getting locked in on what my job is to try and do with that shot, right? Now, the one thing I tell people, and I want to get your advice on it, is that I want people to go through their process, be quite process driven, right, through this here. And when they hit a good shot, nearly use the element of surprise that it's a good shot. Like they're not expecting it. They're not assuming something. They're just like, if I do, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, hit a shot and nearly be like, oh yeah, great. That's good. To a degree where an element of surprise that a good shot has happened, because then what they're doing throughout that process is they're getting rid of that expectations and that pressure to hit a good shot. Anyways, I wanted to get your take on potentially what I just said, and also how do you take pre-shot routines? Is it a consistent thing, or what do you encourage?
So the big mistake about a pre-shot routine is people think it's like a dance routine.
Yes.
What do we want to accomplish in a pre-shot routine?
Get ready for a shot.
Okay. But when we're on the range, we don't usually do it, and we can hit a shot.
Interesting.
But to me, it's about getting focus right.
Okay.
And I believe focus, and I talk about it in my first book, The Mindside Manifesto, which is the fact that I want your focus to work like a funnel. Okay. Which, as you're walking down the fairways, you're riding in a golf cart, you're talking, I don't care what you're thinking about. I don't care. But there comes a point where you start, to your point, data collection. You're collecting information. You're aware of a lot of stuff. You're non-judgmental. And that moves into a strategy. Then you visualize it and you execute it. Okay, that's wonderful. But most players play with it opposite. The awareness is about something that they don't want to do. Their strategy is how to avoid it. And when they go into execution, their mind is wide open because they're trying to take on any information they can to prevent it. So why I say that is a pre-shot routine to me, I want it to be a spot where it allows the mind to connect to the intention of what you want to do. If you tell me you lick your lips 4 times, then I'm going to tell you to do it. Okay? Because you believe it. There's an element that has to be there, though. From a neurocognitive standpoint, there has to be this element that you have to have the understanding of visual or spatial memory and how you represent that in your brain.
Okay.
So when we look up at a target, our brain takes snapshots constantly. Okay? Well, if you don't encode it, and some people are better at this than others, and this is just kind of where their brains are different. Some people look up and they look back down and they're like, yeah, I think the target was somewhere over there. And other people are like, man, I can see, you see the tree up there with that one color that was like, their snapshot is so much better. Their shutter speed is so much better. If I stand behind the ball and I'm trying to go through a routine and a process as if it is the dance routine, when I look up, then that visual memory and that representation, or what we call spatial memory, that starts to erode by nature, decays. It's like a reverse Polaroid picture. Mm-hmm. If I start throwing more thoughts and presence in there, now I've changed my domain and I've now turned sideways to the ball. Okay, if I'm doing all that, then what happens is how much of the visual targeting am I remembering? When there's no pressure, we can pull it off because we have freedom. Start adding pressure, now that spatial memory and that representation starts decreasing exponentially. Mm-hmm. So then we step into it. We never encoded it. We've got to encode it. So one of the ways to do it to get the funnel upright is I like to have a physical anchor or something that somebody will like pull on or hold their towel or drop their towel back or pull on their glove. And I also like players to verbalize what they want to do. That's going to force that encoding to happen. It's going to take it to a higher level. And it creates more fidelity. It takes a better, crisper vision of what we're trying to do. And that's what's critical. And more times than not, we will perform at a level that allows us to succeed because we encoded better. And that's what we got to do. And so I don't care what you do in your pre-shot routine. I don't care if you tiptoe. I don't care anything. But that element, intention, has to be there, and your funnel has to be upright.
Who are some players that you have witnessed who you've seen who we might know who does this quite well? Or, is it something that you can see from a point of view? Right?
So here's the deal. Okay. Every day we wake up and our brain and our cognitive processes, they're not static. It's a dynamic environment. Mm-hmm. How many times have you said, I got 8 hours of sleep and I couldn't focus worth crap? Mm-hmm. Okay. You got 4 hours sleep, had 2 shots of coffee, and you could focus beautifully.
Yeah.
Because your body's pumping adrenaline to help you do that. Mm-hmm. And so the thing is that I want us to not ask why it's off some days or why it's good. It's just, what is it?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm having a little harder time locking into the picture I want to hit. And look, I'm going to go play tomorrow at a golf course I never played with a group of friends, and it's a course I've been wanting to play for a long time. And I will probably suck at that myself. Okay? I get moving fast. I don't lock in sometimes, and I just go through the motions. If I'm playing a low-stress situation, I'm out there hitting balls, I'll execute. There was a player that I worked with for many years, a guy by the name of Hudson Swafford, won 3 times on the PGA Tour. Yeah. Went to live and
big tall guy.
he was down to, I think, one of his last starts on an injury, and he went down to the Dominican Republic tournament. And we kind of talked about this. And I just said, look, all I want you to do is I want you to pull on your glove and then step into the shot with just absolute commitment of the target. And he won that week. Nice. And it was so funny because it was like such a simple little trick. Mm-hmm. And it was a little bit of a parlor trick, but it worked for him. Mm-hmm. And about 3 weeks later, he's like, man, I'm pulling on my glove and it ain't working. Like, the glove isn't the thing. I mean, it's not like we're pulling on your ear and that you produce a quarter. It's the fact that you were so locked in and that you didn't have other thoughts, because that week it just all aligned for you.
And also, yeah, and you kind of gave him a like a simple process to follow as well. It's like, I can do this, so I can, if I do this, and then he'd probably taken that, 3 weeks time. He's like, I'm pulling on this goddamn glove and I'm not getting the result that I want.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not hitting as good as I was. And, he was probably, it was just, when, tour players win 80% of their money in 5 events a year.
100%. Yeah.
They play about 20, 25 additional events and they don't have it. And you look at it and you're like, well, why don't they have it? Well, sometimes the ball doesn't bounce right. Sometimes the hole doesn't fit their eye. Think about what happens to that spatial memory when you have a hole that doesn't fit your eye. Yeah. Why doesn't it fit your eye? I don't know. It just doesn't fit your eye.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
And so that's what the game requires us to do. The game is not played in a static environment. The brain is not static. It's a dynamic, ever-changing obstacle course that we're playing.
Huge. Okay, then let me take that into the next question, right, that I've got. I've had Scott Fawcett on before too, and I've, talked to him a few times. Okay, so when you talk about locking in on that target, and you said at the start, you said you don't do a pre-shot routine on the driving range and you hit good shots. So I was started to think as you were talking there about when we're doing block practice on the driving range, we're hitting 7 irons at a target, but that target is not changing. So we are so locked in on that target, as you talk about taking that, that picture in your mind, because it's there. It hasn't changed. Where when we go out in the golf course, we've got to reconnect with that picture like we do on the driving range because we're doing that block practice. What's your take then? Because that was something I took from that. Definitely. What's your take then on, block practice versus performance practice? How do you encourage this if a player asks you questions about their training plan? I know it's a pretty big open question there, but
no. I mean, look, I think if people are going to argue about block practice versus performance practice, or random practice, I'm going to let them go argue about that. And I'm going to go coach.
Stupid argument, I get it, but I'm talking about intertwining the two and
intertwining it, whatever. Most of those studies have all been done in labs.
Yeah.
All right. They're not done in the real world. Yeah. So we have to extrapolate something. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know many high-level players that are willing to submit to a clinical study. So we make assumptions. We study how people study math problems or learning a motor skill. So we assume, but we're also dealing with the top players in the world at what they do.
Yeah.
There's a certain repetitiveness of block practice that's important. I call those foundations. You got to boil down your foundations to 2 or 3 things. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're working on the block practice of trying to get your arm, hands on plane or whatever, then you need to hit intentional shots, rehearsing that movement to get the motor pattern to feel comfortable. Okay. Now, that's under no pressure, no expectations, and a lot of awareness to the motor plan. We got to test it, but we cannot simulate tournament pressure of golf. Cannot simulate it.
Yeah.
There's very few sports we cannot simulate, and this is one of them. Mm-hmm. So we say, go play and go play against your buddies. Okay, but on the 3rd hole, you're on your phone, you're having a drink, you're shooting the shit, you're doing whatever. But in a tournament, now every consequence matters. And the more that we have consequence, the more we try to control. Mm-hmm. So if our motor pattern has more variance than we want because we don't do the block practice and we add pressure to it, all that's going to do is increase the variance.
Yeah.
So why not practice with the understanding that we cannot replicate a consistent motor pattern? Can't do it. We cannot do it. However, we can have intentional practice that has got repetitive ideas and feels that we're doing. Okay. You can't put your hand down on the table and lift it back up and touch your nose 10 times in a row in the exact same force, velocity, angles, tension, anything. Okay. We're built to be adaptive. But just like learning to write, I practice certain skills. And if I want to get better at those skills, I have to practice them with intention with the goal of learning how to execute the skill. So we want to call that block practice. The way to do it is repetition.
Yep.
We can't get repetition in a highly variable competitive environment because there's not enough of those. We can't simulate them. So we have to be willing to try randomness to create variance somehow. And that's performance practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the thing. You got to do things a lot to learn how to maximize them. And if we don't do that, then we're playing. But I don't get into all the motor study learning because I'm not a motor pattern specialist.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to go to a surgeon to fix my knee, I'm going to ask how many times have you cut through the skin and how many times have you done ACL reconstructions?
Yeah.
If they're like, oh, I haven't done any, I've just practiced on a bunch of pigs, I'm not going to do that.
It's the same when you go to the barbershop and it's like, apprentice haircuts, $5 or $10. I'm like, yeah, no thanks. It's like, no thanks. Yeah. Same with the tattoo artist. It's like, yeah, that's not me. Hey, tell me then, all right, I want to ask you a bit of another question about, you know, I've heard it a lot about, you know, PGA Tour players talking about peaking for certain events.
Bullshit.
I'm glad. Well, I was going to ask you, how do I get players to peak for certain events? Because I need help.
No, you don't. Okay. And it's a fallacy. Look, everybody wants to peak for the big events. People want to peak at the right time. How about we just go show up each event and get the most out of each event? Now, if they're peaking means they're improving their practice, but usually practice leads to more expectations. Max Homa said something years ago when he was in the lead at the Masters, and he's taught by a dear friend of mine, Mark Blackburn. And he made a comment, and he said, you know, I used to prepare for majors by going home, spending a week at home, maximizing my motor patterns and doing all the shit that I need to do. And then I go out and play, and Monday and Tuesday, it would start eroding, and then I get frustrated on Wednesday, and then I go play on Thursday and play like crap. He said, you know, now I started playing on the weekends before, and I've already gone through all those temper tantrums, and now I've got a game that I can trust a little bit more, and I got predictability. I totally think that's right.
Yeah.
But every player is different. Okay. And as a player, you have to understand what your formula is. But peaking, we don't control that enough. We never know when we're going to get hot, and we never know when we're going to get cold.
Yeah.
Sports are based on surges and momentum and then regressions.
Momentum. Yeah.
If we could predict that, then we could bet on it and we'd all make a lot of money. But there was a huge gambling sting today on the NBA here in the United States because it's fixed because you can't control it. And people try to control it by fixing it by doing illegal shit. Okay. So you can't do it. Well,
it's interesting that you talk about that, you know, about Max's approach there about just playing the week before. Because, you know, there's the same thing we have here. We have NRL in Australia, so rugby league. And there's often that conversation. Well, there used to be the conversation around about having the week off before, you know, the finals, having the week off or having the last round off and which way perform better. But it seems to me that with Max, for instance, in that case, what I've learned from you today is like, if he went home the week before the major, he's nearly creating this expectation like, oh, I've had this. Yeah, he's creating expectation. Like, I've had the week off. I've worked on my motor pattern. And he's approaching the next week completely different to how he does every other week. And that expectation is becoming that dark cloud on him as well, right? Throughout that. So,
yeah. But here's the deal. You're on the 9th hole of a tournament. Does it really matter what you did last week? Like, why do we think golfers are the worst practicers in the history of any kind of sport?
I say that every week. Yeah.
The best thing for a golfer to do is leave on the day before, go watch a movie and decompress. I was over at the University of Alabama all day. We got a big football game this weekend. And today was the last day of kind of a walkthrough practice. It was kind of ingraining. Tomorrow they're going to be chill. They're going to walk through a little bit, but they're not going to really move much. They're just going to kind of chill. They're going to optimize a little bit. They're going to get on an airplane, fly over to South Carolina and get ready to play. And then they're going to surge of energy towards that game.
Yeah.
Golfers wear themselves out the day before, hoping to find something because they don't want to be lost out there.
Yeah.
And as a result, what happens is they're constantly in a cycle of frustration and anger. If you looked at it differently and said, look, I always have tools. In any scenario I'm in, I can respond to. Now, will I have the perfect swing or I don't even need it?
Yeah.
I can still move the ball down the fairway. Now, I'd like to hit it to a certain proficiency level. I mean, listen, we're not talking about being incompetent as a player, but, you know, it is a game of razor thin margins. We can't control those razor thin margins.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, we have to be good at what we do in order to compete at the level we need to. And the good at what we do needs to be what I call competitive IQ. You've got to have the ability to compete in the heat of the moment or you're lost. The game is a competition. It is not a modeling contest.
Yes. I love that. But yeah, and I was going to add something in there as well, is about, I think a lot of golfers out there really underestimate, or even like, you know, young professional golfers underestimate how much their body is under stress throughout a round of golf in that tournament pressure.
And their mental side.
Because it doesn't look like it. You know, you talk about there, you know, when we go to just the big four events here in Australia, you know, I have to go to like Aussie Open, Aussie PGA, Vic Open, and watch all the players there. And, you know, you're getting to the course, you might be there an hour and a half earlier, 2 hours, and you're playing around, and then you might be doing a bit of a warm down, whatever you're doing, then you're going home. Call that, you know, there's some 6-7 hours of, you know, pretty high stress type of work. You wouldn't see a football team doing 6-7 hours of training the day before, you know, they're like a high stress training, right? So,
correct.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so we go out and play and we're testing constantly.
And then we see people like Bryson, though, you know, pounding thousands of balls right before and after. He's obviously a different beast, right?
They're different. And that's his model, right? And, you know, I think that's what we have to look at and understand is that some people chip with a 60 degree, some people like to pitch and chip with a 52. If I see somebody struggling chipping, I'm not going to tell them to chip with the clubs I chip with. Just same way I'm not going to walk into a restaurant and tell somebody how to cook their burger. Don't care. You want to put peanut butter on your burger? Go for it. Not my judge. Don't care.
Yeah. Please don't put peanut butter on my burger. Hey, I want to talk to you about the word confidence, right? The term confidence. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we hear this in golf a lot. You know, I'm not confident enough going into this week, or I'm not feeling very confident with my game, or I lack confidence today. It's a word we use a lot we hear a lot. And I've always kind of used this example as well, as that confidence, not this example in my head though, is I use like a boxing terminology. Like if a boxer won his last 8 fights by knockout, he should be feeling quite confident going into his next fight. If he's lost his last 8 fights by knockout, I'm assuming his confidence will be low. And then he's got to take in this kind of fake type of confident mindset, which I'll probably ask you next. But tell me like the term confidence and when players talk to you about confidence.
So confidence is a little bit of a mystery. And so people say, well, I want to have good results to have confidence. But how do you have good results is I need to be confident. So are you that kind of player that you can only play good when you're confident?
Yeah, okay.
Well, no. Then why are we looking for it? It helps. Okay, don't get me wrong. It's like turbo. It helps. It's really good. However, you don't need it. You can have belief in what you do, and you can have trust in a system that you put forward.
Yeah.
That will build confidence, which will build self-belief.
Yeah.
So if you don't have confidence, then what can you trust? Let's go back to, well, I can trust I can hit. Like, I don't have confidence in my driver right now. Well, do you have trust in a fairway finder with the driver? No. Trust with a 3-wood? Yes. Okay, so when we're out on the golf course, do we need to just keep hitting driver to try to find it? Or are we better off sometimes to downshift and put the 3-wood to hit something, get it in play? And guess what? Confidence starts building up on the tee box, which then allows us to play a little bit better from there too.
Yes, I like that because, you know, talking with a professional player the other day that I was helping with, and he seems to me that he has to be hitting it good for the first 3 or 4 holes or it's all over, right? And
isn't that funny?
Isn't it interesting? Yeah, and interesting. Like, obviously, you've come across that a few times, right? People coming to you about that.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
What's your answer to that? Obviously, this is what you kind of spoke about there. Like, you don't have to be confident to be playing well, right?
How about we look at it and go, what I would say is, man, you have limited your options as a player. If the early flow has to go your way.
Yeah.
You have just limited how many opportunities to score.
Yeah.
And we got to change that. How can we get better there so that that doesn't have the same level of power over what we do?
Okay.
Right? So then the question is, well, do you take a fake confidence in there? How about just the ability to stand up to anything confidence? How about just I can take on what's in front of me? Because if I took a ball to anyone who's listening to this and said, I'm going to take you out there and I'm going to drop a ball in the woods, play it. You'd say, well, what's the goal? Make the lowest score you can from here. Like, make the lowest score. May look at it and say, I'm going to pitch out. Pretty good from 100 yards or whatever y'all play down there. 100 yards. And I can get it up and down with a wedge more times than not. Well, then why wouldn't you do that? But because we're pissed at what got the ball there, we change our strategy to overcome it versus every shot truly is a unique challenge. It's a unique puzzle piece. That's it. That's all it is. You boil it down to that.
Yeah.
Then it's like, take on the challenge in front of you. I don't care what you did 4 holes ago. People will say, well, I've got to hit a good drive right now because in 3 holes, I've got a tough driving hole with water down the right. My God, maybe the tee box is angled differently on the next hole. Maybe the guy who set the tee markers just didn't set them down in a line and it's going to be a little visually weird.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're moving better. Maybe you're not. But there's an element that we have to allow us to respond to the challenge in the moment versus trying to dictate and predict every little thing that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not you don't want to get smashed around by what's just happened and letting it, obviously, talk about forgetting the last shot. But I'm assuming that
you don't forget it. You'll never forget the last shot.
Well, moving on,
if I punched you, I wouldn't. If I, caught you with a right hand that into your bearded left jaw, you wouldn't forget it, but you'd still have to respond to the fight or run like hell. So your jaw could be hurting, but if you're focused on your intentions of what you want to do, I can tell you right now, if I stunned you and you came back with a haymaker trying to knock me out, you're probably going to make a fool of yourself because you're not thinking clearly. Your mind is racing. Your jaw is hurting. You don't have your timing. But if you were in a fight, you were like, hey, I can handle that. And you learned how to have a defensive mechanism for a little while and jab and keep somebody away. You can chop away until I wore myself out. Now you can come after me.
Yeah. So there's like a level of awareness around the shot because you got to be aware if in case there's a pattern happening with the ball flight right throughout the thing, but then you've got to also learn to kind of, I guess stand up to the plate, have that resilience, right? And
totally
and hit the next shot.
Yep.
I like that. Is that a common trait that you've seen amongst a lot of your PGA Tour players that you have about the ability to be able to do that? Or have you seen some?
I hope when we work together it is. Because it's something I beat on all the time. Yeah. Because it's what we do in other sports.
Yeah.
I don't understand your game of rugby. It's fun to watch. Don't have a freaking clue how it's scored or what the rules are. I think they make them up as they go along. But what happens, but those rugby players they're resilient as hell.
Yeah.
They don't feel great out there, but they keep playing the next point. They keep playing the next, whatever it is, the next volley, whatever they call it. But they know when they're done, they're beaten up. Yeah. But they're proud of their fight, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
So awesome. And we look at that as like, oh, unbelievable professional players. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, and I was reflecting with that student I was talking to you about that, about building that resilience out there and not having to be confident or have your swing as you might, try to label it, which can put you in a box and obviously your opportunity to perform well is gone. But I reflected on a tournament. I remember watching the Masters one year and just watching Ricky Fowler play, and he was, it's probably 5-6 years ago. And he played the first 9 holes and I just felt like he hit 2 or 3 greens in regulation, but he turned like 1 or 2 under, right? I remember just going, man, this guy is he's doing such an awesome job of hanging in there, right? Like it was incredible. And then I think he went on the back and had 3-4 under. He's the top 10 in the leaderboard, right?
Yeah.
And I always remember that story. I remember things like that, like Nick Dunlap's story. I remember watching that going, man, that's good that he did that. Like there's so many people that in his position would have hit that many greens, would have been 3, 4, 5 over par, whatnot. And then his ability just to kind of hang in there, turn it around, and I'm not going to say somehow found a swing, but just flushed it on the back 9 and scored really, really well.
He just stayed relevant enough until the hot point came. Not just putting the whole day into like,
in the morning you kick your toe, oh, this day's over, it's gone, right? There's an opportunity to turn it around. It doesn't have to be a bad day all day. Hey, tell me, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I want to let you go. Tell me, I would like to ask you a question about two more ones I want to talk to you about is, do you have a level of importance in regard to reflection of a round of golf and reflecting on it, good or bad, and something that I've, incorporated with my students around a bit of a mental scorecard and reflecting on some of the decisions they made out on the course? Do you encourage your golfers to do that?
Yeah, I have a journal that I sell through Amazon. And what it does is it kind of looks at what things went well, things that didn't go well, and then kind of how you rate your physical and mental game.
Yeah.
The other thing that we have to do is we have to study where we were stressed and how it impacted us. Mm-hmm. Because stress is going to happen. And if we're going to experience stress, then, man, don't waste a struggle. Learn from it. Learn from it. Okay? And the best thing to do with struggle is to make it regular. The way we make it regular is we learn from it and we learn how to manage it.
Yep.
And what I mean by making it regular is I don't want it to keep happening, but when it does happen again, you don't have the same response to it. You have a better response to it because you've done it before. It's familiar. It's repeatable. I know how to deal with this. And that helps.
That's interesting. And like you said about not forgetting the shot, but then just keep learning and learning and learning.
Can't undo it. People, I say, I made up for that bogey. You didn't make up for anything. You just made a birdie. Good job.
Yeah, that's interesting too, isn't it? That's got me smiling. That I understand that. I hear that a lot. All right, tell me about. I keep saying tell me. All right, I got to use different terminology there. Okay, I would like to ask you a question about building mental resilience within juniors and college golfers, and when also college golfers, I'm going to say even a little bit younger people out there, because I know we're living in a different age today, and kids are treated a little bit differently and they're raised a little bit differently. I've got 3 under 5, so I'm going through this learning phase myself. Tell me, there you go again. How can we teach this within juniors and stuff like this about developing this mental resilience?
The biggest mistake we make in raising kids, and, I think the thing that's to do is kids are so much faster at solving problems because they have so many more resources available to them. But what happens is because we have so many resources available to them, we have so many things that we measure against. So we can almost make somebody perfect in TrackMan, but that doesn't really mean they're going to play better.
Yeah.
So if you don't use the competitive environment as a learning laboratory, you're failing them.
Yeah.
The answer is not why did you do that? The question is, what did you learn about when you're in that situation? Yeah. All right. It's like if we have a tough day and somebody says, why did you do that 8 hours ago? You're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Or, what influenced me was this, this, and this. So what I want to do is tell me what you were feeling there. Tell me what you were thinking. Not why did you make that mistake? We know what mistake was happening. You don't need me to tell you that.
Yes.
But what did you go through? What was your process in that situation? And then talk about it, because experience is growth.
Yeah.
Experience leads to wisdom. And sometimes experience is expensive and it's painful. But that's okay.
Yeah.
But I never want to take away the pain from somebody. I want them to realize that they have the resiliency to stay in it and work through it.
I love that. So when we're talking about building that resilience, it's in not so much in a training aspect of what we're doing 7 days a week on the driving range or in the course. It's more about reflecting on that tournament condition round and reflecting on, like you say in your journal there, about what we did well, what we could do better. Okay, fascinating. All right, can you tell me here, last question here, your core coaching philosophy, the mind side, what does this represent?
Yeah, so the mind side's about the mental side of how we go into the game, right? And there's focus, there's intention. I'm really big now, and I'm getting bigger and bigger into it, about the competitive side, because I know that that's ultimately what matters. Working across so many different sports, the way that we approach the competitive environment is what separates us. Yeah. And golfers fall in love with technique, and because that's what we can control. What happens is, under pressure, we fall into what I call the competitive paradox, which is we revert back to technique because it's the only thing that we can control. And we're trying to refine it, and we hold on to the steering wheel harder. We grab on with more intention. A true competitive IQ is trying to get a half second ahead and figure out how to navigate through the competitive environment. That's what elite competition is all about.
Interesting. I like it.
Yeah.
Dr. Bhrett, mate, you've been great. I'm absolutely fascinated, and I can't wait to share this with everyone out there. Thanks for jumping on the Golf Coach podcast, mate.
You got it.